Our guest author this morning is Thamsanqa Malinga, and he published his debut book titled Blame Me On Apartheid, Colonialism, Apartheid and the Legacy of Townships as Peripheral Spaces for Non-Beings late last year. In this book, Thamsanqa reflects on township life by drawing inspiration from his own experience of growing up in the environment. He explores important topics such as township education, such as money matters, entrepreneurship, unemployment, and the inferiority complex that he says has created self-hate, amongst others. Well, Thamsanqa is joining me now via Zoom for a further discussion on this. Thamsanqa, very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Good morning, Simpiu, and thank you for having me on the show, and good morning to your viewers as well.
This is a very important subject that we will be discussing with you, and I'm actually glad that we have you on the show this morning, Thamsanqa. I mean, Blame Me On Apartheid. What is this book all about, and why did you feel the need to pen it and share it with the public?
Okay, Blame Me On Apartheid is basically what I call my contribution to the South African history discourse. You know, because we've had a lot of history written by either, white scholars or international scholars on South Africa. So I felt that there should be someone who's lived and experienced what I write about in the book and to chronicle it down. So I borrowed a title from the late William Blake Mudisane's book, which was Blame Me On History. Mudisane had written about how history had deprived him of being in the midst of the society that he wanted to assimilate into, which was the white society back then during apartheid times. So I borrowed that title, but my title is a tongue-in-cheek way of saying you blame my condition on apartheid. So my condition as a young black man coming from the township, so is actually a condition that was systematically and structurally created by apartheid. Okay. So that's what the title is about. And actually it was inspired by another book, which was written by my nephew, Shopi Muloto. It's called From the Township. So when Shopi wrote this book, as a young person who was born in 1993, he was now talking about issues that he's observing in the townships. Yes. And I felt that, no, let me further contribute to the discourse, because as a young man, he sees unemployment, but he doesn't see it the way I see it. So I had to now also say, besides my contribution to history, but let me, for the generation of Mpomuloto and his peers, let me also give them a context of what the townships are, and how the townships came about, and what they see in the townships, what created all the conditions that they see in the townships.
Now, do unpack for us some of your own experiences of growing up in a township during apartheid and, the kind of psychological bondage, as it were, that shaped your thoughts and your views on this matter.
Yeah, one of the subjects that I touch about that you spoke of is the issue of self-hate. Yes. I say that people are saying that Black South Africans are xenophobic, but let us trace the history of self-hate. I start by talking about the issue of the Group Areas Act during the apartheid and how townships were zoned according to different languages or different tribes. I was born and raised in CWJ, Central Western Jabavu in Soweto. Now the issue with the township that I was raised in, you've got CWJ, a smaller component, which is called the Zulu section, and you've got another CWJ just across the soccer fields called Sotho section. Now, this is what the structural and systematic creation that is apartheid did. Creates one township, it splits it into Zulus and Sothos. Mm-hmm. And you know what happened? Growing up, we used to go into the soccer field and just to throw stones at each other with the young Sotho boys who lived on CWJ Sotho section, and the same thing with them. You couldn't even go past CWJ Sotho section because the situation was that, you come from CWJ Zulu section. So okay. I draw that and say that is what the Group Areas Act created. But it didn't start only with the Group Areas Act. You had to go back and look at the balkanization of African people at the time of the arrival of colonialists. There were no tribes then. People lived according to who was the leader. It was either the people of Mtetwa, the people of Zwide, the people of Mantatisi, the people of Mushweshwe, the people of Soshangane. So our people did not identify themselves as Zulus and Sotus. So that was created when colonialists came, and then they started saying, no, but you are Sutu, you are Zulu, you are this, you are that. So if you trace, then I do that. I say my experience growing up in the township was like this, but it was also entrenched by apartheid through Group Areas Act, but it started with the balkanization of the ethnic groups that were there by colonialists.
And I suppose it underscores the identity crisis that so many South Africans had found themselves in at that particular moment. And you go on to say that the townships continue to be the peripheral spaces for non-beings. Say that in English.
Yeah. Well, it is a term by Enrique Dassel, to say it is spaces that are on the cast to the outside, where those who live there are not seen as human beings, are non-beings.
Yes.
When I say townships are spaces for non-beings, I refer to the fact that if you look, for example, right now at how the rail infrastructure in the townships has been, demolished within a space of 2 years. I mean, last year with COVID, and probably it started late in 2019. There are areas where the one important mode of transport, which is the trains that runs in the townships, are no longer running. But the government is just sitting idle, and they're not even producing intelligence reports to say, what's the cause of this? Have we arrested people? What are the syndicates? So that space is a space for non-beings. It's forgotten. No one's going to be looking at the infrastructure. No one's going to be looking at the service delivery, because those are non-beings. They are sitting there. I'll give you an example. When we had the issue of the Rolex gang that was targeting super rich white people in Sentin who lived in Houghton. I can even tell you right now that because of the report that came about, it said it's targeting white people shopping in Sentin and living in Houghton. That report came about, and they were able to quickly deal with the Rolex gang. But if you go to Khayelitsha, you go to Manenberg, you go to Gugulethu, you go to Mitchell's Plain, we still cannot solve the issue of crime there, because those are peripheral spaces. They are just spaces that are on the outskirts, that are for what I call non-beings. They are not people who are beings, like those who will have their issues taken seriously.
Now, on the issue of the need for, what I'd call special segregation of people of color in the form of townships, speak to us about this need that you say the nation must dive deeper into the effects of this geographic partitioning and those of the overall legacy of apartheid 26 years after the abolishment of apartheid.
Yeah, I speak about that because it was drawn from how, there would be areas for colored people, areas for Indian people, areas for black people. And I say we should really question that. We should really go back and make sure that we do not, go back into doing the same, of which in the book I write about that. I write about the fact that in as much as it is the whole state of non-being of the people and being cast into the periphery, it comes from colonialism and apartheid. But I still write and say it is perpetuated by the government of the day, because they inherited that system. They never demolished it. They inherited it. So they still build and they still prioritize issues according to who, according to race, according to ethnicity,
And I think one of the most pertinent topics in the book is where you talk about the township economy. Just take us through, your stance on this particular topic. As we've seen a boom in the township economy in terms of real estate, in terms of, retail giants now filtering the townships.
But But then the first question we're addressing in the book, especially I think Ngalwana writes about it in the introduction. He says, why are we calling it township economy, as if it's supposed to be an economy that's separate from the broader South African economy? You see, that it starts there. It starts by saying it's a township economy, because then we are making it as something that should be on the outskirts of the main South African economy. It's part of the South African economy. And the second part of it is that economy, instead of it being, just designed and promoted and supported to benefit the residents of the townships.
Yes.
We are building more shopping malls. South Africa is number 6 in the world in terms of building shopping malls than building factories, where we're going to employ people. We're building shopping malls, and shopping malls are taking the rent out of the townships. We never have a situation whereby we're saying those youngsters that are busy designing T-shirts, Pez Wabo and all those type of T-shirts, those, how do we make sure that we take them and we put them in one space,
yes,
where it's sort of like their own mall, and we make sure that they have infrastructure and shops to sell, retail space to sell.
Okay.
And once we gave them that space, we've given them the opportunity to then sell their products and in turn employ people. But what we are always glad about is the issue that a mall is being built, and then the mall has 2 anchor shops, Pick n Pay and Edgar's or whoever, and those shops, they take them the rent out of the townships. So I trace it back to the apartheid days. I trace it back to colonialism.
You know what, Thamsanqa, we definitely need a whole day to discuss this, because just reflection on history and reflections of apartheid and the kind of impact it has on society today really needs so much time. And one more important thing, I mean, you say that the telling of so many of Black South African stories is often done by people who have not experienced the life that we have lived. I think you have a point in that. Well, Thamsanqa Malinga, great chatting to you, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me, Simpiwe, and thank you to our viewers as well.
All right, great stuff. Do have a great day, Thamsanqa. Well, there we go. That was author Thamsanqa Malinga, and we've been talking about his debut book titled Blame Me On Apartheid.